we go. Yay.
Excellent.
Luckman. It's, oh, I have to consent. By attending to this meeting, you can say, oh, we're going.
We're going, right?
Okay, great.
Informed consent.
Yay, you have my consent. I do consent. It's so good to connect with you.
Likewise. I know we chatted on the phone like a year ago or something like that. And
yeah, we did.
That was really fun to talk. And of course, I've been a big fan of your music and your Substack presence, your postmodern, which I think is a great name.
Thank you. Thank you. And you know, it's funny, I was pondering today how when I communicate about the connections I've made on Substack with other people, I use the word friend. And then I think how funny it is to use the word friend to you describe people I've actually never met, but there is almost more of a kinship. Like the fact that I know I could show up in your living room and say anything I want to say and be fully self-expressed, that is a standard for friendship for me, you know? And it's amazing the kinship that can be created through these online spaces.
It's really true for me, and I feel the same way towards you. Absolutely. For me, it goes to another level because I don't put my picture out there, so people don't know what I look like. So in the past, when I've developed those friendships, and then I finally meet someone in person, which does occasionally happen, right? You know, somewhere, somehow. That makes it even more interesting because there's still that wonderful connection, even though all that we've been using to connect is our voices or our words, you know. It's just really cool.
Yeah. It's really, really, really cool. And it really does speak to the undercurrents of the illusion. You know, I find it interesting, and I always struggle with how to put things into words, which is why I think ultimately I do use music often to express. But it speaks to me of the mutability of what's going on here and how it doesn't take a physical space or a physical object to be real. You know, a real can exist in the ether, and it can exist in the non-physical and material. And well, what's real is always an interesting question, but there's no denying a feeling of connection when you have it. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the concept of real versus simulation versus dream versus construct, you know, those terms have been on my mind so much. And I believe that, you know, friendship is real if you feel it, if you believe it, if you're there with your imagination and making that connection. And this is why children can have amazing friendships with, you know, so-called imaginary friends, right?
Yeah.
I dispute that those are imaginary whatsoever. I think they're absolutely real to that child's imagination. And that if anything, we need to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
That's what'll get us out of the mess we're in, is we can learn how to tap back into our own childlike imaginations.
Absolutely. And wonderment, you know, it is amazing to me that it is. I mean, and that's the game afoot. It's that we are going to be challenged with things that, you know, seek to erode our sense of wonder. And it's definitely our work, or at least mine, to hold it and to bring it back and to live inside of it. And I think that's why we find each other, because I think we sense that sense of wonder. And it's a beautiful thing, you know.
We're also bird tribes, you know. You're in the nest, right?
Yeah.
So we're birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're members of the bird tribes.
That's funny. I never thought of that. Yeah. So your beautiful book, you know, it's funny when I first started my postmodern, I've grown a lot since then. And in fact, I've been considering changing the name to something else, but I know you and I connected because you were coming from the solipsistic everything is subjective. And at that point, I was very clear on mining for what is objective within the subjective. And my personal journey and learning and excavation over the past year and a half, let's say, time is elusive for me, has led me closer to seeing the world through your eyes, is to understanding where you were coming from when I first crossed your path. And I'm now really seeing, I think I understood it conceptually, that everyone sees the world through their own eyes, and there's as many worlds as there are people. But now, as the seeker version of myself, I've now come to understand that, yes, the world is going to feed you what you're looking for. And so if you think that you're only going to find peace through the discovery of some real truth about the world, well, you may never have peace. And, you've realized all along the game of this thing that will, if you're looking for it, you can find it. In fact, if I may, I took some quotes, as you know, from your book as I was reading. And one of the ones I took was, which I loved. Let me see, where is it? Truthers aren't discovering truth. They're just making shit real. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good soundbite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I talk about reification and how things can be made to be real. They don't start out real. And lots of energy today, sirens, and there's motorcycles. The weather's really good down here in Florida, so the motorcyclers are out. And so anyway, just let that be some color to our conversation. But yeah, the idea of starting with an extrinsic real that you can get at, that's just there without you, I think is the height of folly. And that's where most people are, unfortunately. And that's why we can't get out of where we are as a society. It's because we are locked in the desert of the real, to quote Morpheus, quoting Baudrillard. So that's where we are. Castaneda would say we are stuck in the place of reason. Same thing. It is a subjectivity, not realizing that its objectivity is just a lie of subjectivity. It's that Ouroboros that keeps going around and around, because it's that subjective mind is creating that objective mindset, and the objective mindset keeps it from seeing the subjectivity of its objectivity, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, crazily it does. It really does. And I mean, I guess, and I'm good. I don't want to assume, I'm going to ask you, I suppose, the beautiful motivation for you to write this is so that you're providing a breadcrumb for people who may be ripe to adopt that understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one reason, not just to get attacked by a bunch of materialists and empiricists and truthers, which I'm sure will happen. But yeah, I wanted to connect with people who were on this journey. I think of it as the hero's journey in. You have to go in to get out. And the whole idea here is to find your inner power, find the inner pathways out of the matrix. Basically, you're looking for your own back doors, to use that analogy, so that you can, fly this chicken coop one of these days.
Yeah.
And I wanted to support people on that path. I also wanted to support people who weren't quite there yet, but who wanted to up their power, of their personal power and energy, their focus, their ability to manifest, and to have a better life in the matrix. And I provide tools for how to do just that.
Yes. And I actually think the timing for me is really significant, because your stuff involves the body. And, I'm going to use the word seeker, as a lifelong, heady, concept driven person, my body has been a pedestal for my head for 48 years. And I think for me, the final frontier, I feel like I've freed my mind, as maybe unhumble as that sounds, but I'm now in a place where I get that. And, my world is my world. I'm not here to really fix anything. I'm just here to really be me as best as possible and affect my external world from who I'm being. And I get all of that and I'm doing that. But now it's really about caring for my body as it assists me in that process. And I can feel the remnants of all of my experiences that I've held on to and all of my unhealed, conflict or what have you, residue of old versions of myself that I've now outgrown that are still there. And it's like I want to polish that all up. And so it feels to me like you are providing the next step for me to embark upon to do that.
Oh yeah, I love to hear you say that. I think that's true. I think that, I produce, well, I share a bunch of different tools. I've in previous interviews, I've talked about how the book is sort of unofficially divided into two parts, where the first part is the not doings, things to stop doing that are taking your energy and eroding your health and mental health as
Mm.
energy is siphoned off by the matrix, basically. And then the second half of the book is a series of doings, kind of recommended practices for recuperating your energy and healing your trauma.
Yeah.
So you could start wherever you need to start. I mean, some people aren't even ready to do the doings. They need to spend a lot of time paring down their life and engaging the not doings.
Yeah.
And that's fine, absolutely fine, because we've been on this crazy rat race that has just ratcheted up and up and up with the internet over the years to a point where I describe people as kind of running around with their heads on fire. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done in silence and in solitude
Yeah.
and in nature and in calm ways. I talk about the power of silence, the power of procrastination as a creative tool for just learning how to do nothing, just to sit around doing nothing again.
Yeah. And it's amazing how hard that is. And you don't really know. Of course, our conditioning really fosters a lot of blind spots. Today, I struggled with that because I can see that I'm up against the conditioning that says if I'm not moving my world forward today, I'm failing. I'm wasting my time, or, I'm living an unsuccessful, wasted day. And at least I'm at a point where I have the awareness that's what I'm saying to myself, and I'm overriding it, which is fantastic. But it runs very deep. It's amazing how deep that runs. And with the people running around with their heads on fire, you're right. I think the first step for people is to stop reacting,
Oh,
every
absolutely.
to generalize, most people are in just a constant state of reaction without an awareness that they are. And
Absolutely.
right, I mean, it's incredible how that is the case, and it's just this thing. And I was thinking last night when I was in my studio, I thought, be the pause of the pendulum. Like maybe that's a really beautiful new song title or something, but
That is nice. I like that
right?
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, to really work on this swinging back and forth. And it's interesting how the conditioning likes to work on not having us understand that the one thing arises out of this and it causes the reaction of the next thing. And it's so, yes, people aren't and even more so now, there's so much more distraction and compulsion to be looking outside. And that's getting harder, I think, for people to do. And I want to be cautious making that story, but it appears to be, like you say, kind of this ramping up, ever more distractions and ever more tantalizing things to be reacting to.
More
Um,
content to create and consume that's the same as all the other content that's created and consumed because everybody's copying everybody else. I mean, it's just a joke. Everything is a frigging joke right now. And you
Yeah.
just have to step back and just see it for that and laugh. Be willing to laugh and be willing to laugh at yourself. I mean, you're not the only person who feels that deeply indoctrinated compulsion to go, 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 go. And I mean, I'm super type A. I mean, I always was. And I was such a golden boy growing up and played quarterback and,
Wow.
valedictorian and all this stuff, it was blah, blah, blah. It was just, I'm not saying my motivations were necessarily healthy. In some ways, they were selfish motivations and they were protective motivations. So, it wasn't, all beer and Skittles, as
Yeah.
they say. But I did want to say that, yeah, this reactivity thing with the pendulum, one of the things that I touch on, and I don't spend a lot of time on it in the book because it's just an introduction to some alchemical concepts. But I do mention the tria prima in alchemy, which is the recipe that has, typically it's sulfur and mercury and salt or something like that. Anyway, it's three things that, it sounds chemical, but really this is code for the
Yeah.
in breath, the out breath, and the pause between the breaths.
Wow. Yeah.
And that, so the pendulum analogy is perfect. So the in breath would be equivalent, if I've got this correct, would be equivalent to the unconsciousness, the unconscious mind. The
Yeah.
out breath is the doing, and that is equivalent to the conscious, so-called conscious mind. And the subconscious is the mediator between the two, and that is the void space.
Huh.
So the way that you travel inward on this alchemical journey is to learn your particular jam when it comes to combining those three modalities to get your consciousness to go deeper and deeper into the dream world while still awake.
Wow. And how much of that is literally about breath? Would you say all of it? Does it-
No, it's the breath is one aspect, an important aspect. That's why in pragmalchemy, which is this body work and breath work practice that I've just introduced,
Yeah.
I do focus on breathing and connecting with the body in a myofascial sense and in a posing sense, where how you place the body, how you position it in a kind of yogic or Pilates way at times, or there's some other influences. But the other thing you're doing is you're using your mind to imagine specific things, and you're really activating the potential. For example, in the second pragmalchemy exercise, it's called taking wing with the phoenix heart, and you're basically posed on your block, which is called the Ouroboros. That's the serpent consuming its own tail in alchemy, and that's going in to get out. That endless loop, the alpha and the omega, all of that. So you're poised on the block. It's on your breastplate, and your arms are spread out, and you're imagining yourself. You're doing a certain kind of breathing, and then you're imagining yourself as the phoenix, and all of the energy that you've taken in when you've breathed in all of this energy, then you route it through your heart, and then from your heart down into your cauldron, which is, in men it's a little area behind the belly button, and in women it's the full area of the womb. And so you take all of that down, and you're breathing it down into that area in a way, but you're also imagining it moving as well. And so all the energy gets stored down in there. And then you use your imagination to pack the energy ever smaller and tighter. Because what you're endeavoring to do is to use the sustained focus of your attention in your imagination to create a kind of tulpa or egregore in your body that is the philosopher's stone, that begins to take on an actual kind of subtle mass at some point and become more and more real. And it is an energy powerhouse. It's like a nuclear device that allows you to have a chance to become immortal as you choose your own way of dying and entering into eternity.
Wow. Amazing. You know, I have been gifted with an avatar that is very yin yang. I'll just say quickly that my adaptation into survival in this world meant that hiding meant the most sense for me. And I did that for so much of my life. And a part of that was to not breathe. It's like, if you want to hide, if you're playing a game of hide and seek and you don't want to be found, then you're best to not breathe, because then you can make yourself tiny and quiet. And, I'm 49 and I am still learning how to breathe, and I'm feeling this huge desire. I can feel like I'm at this place of where I'm plateauing unless I learn how to breathe. And I don't want to cry. I cry every podcast, but I'm feeling like this work of yours, it's calling to me, to really bring me to the next level. Yeah.
Mm.
Amazing.
Well, you cry all you want to. I mean, some of this is, I believe one of the reasons that people can get emotional discussing this, and this is not the first time this has happened, is because of the body releasing certain things. And,
Yeah.
it's a very corporeal experience.
Yes.
And because what I'm proposing is that there is a way to unlock the power of the breath that does not simply involve the active breathing. It also involves myofascial release of areas that restrict the breath throughout
Yes.
throughout the diaphragm, the chest, the collarbone area, the shoulders, shoulder blades, the top of the thighs. I mean, it all can really constrict the hips, of course. And so
Yes.
I'm proposing that you can combine breath with myofascial release with the imagination, and you can even, because I'm going to be teaching people in subsequent exercises in pragmalchemy to go into their mental chamber and begin imagining their body healed.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Yeah.
actually using some of the energy that they're distilling through this process to create an egregore of their own body that is a better version of it.
Oh. Yeah. That is the inner technology we've been gifted with and born with. It's just been dormant in many of us, many who haven't truly walked the shamanistic path. It's all there. That is there for us to do that, and I'm reading a lot of Neville lately. And so, of
Yeah, he's
course,
great.
yeah, it's become more of my guidance towards, living in the end. I'm it, and really using that to actually modify my behavior in the now. So there's so much power to what you're saying, and I have a silly example how I've done that recently. I went shopping, grocery shopping to get some food, and there was a bunch of fresh flowers by the checkout. And my mind was like, overruled it. No, you don't need flowers, just get the groceries. And then I did the thing of, well, I'm a queen. I'm all about, beauty and and procuring items that give me joy. And and that's not frivolous. It's like living in the abundance and surrounding myself with things that just make me happy. And so that immediate interruption into being the queen I see myself as, who has fresh flowers around her house, I then bought the flowers. So
Hmm.
it's this immediate modification. And this is what we mean when we say you create your reality. It's how you think and operate can be overruled with the egregore of the ideal vision you have of yourself. It's how you become it is by being it incrementally or in the moment.
Right. I mean, even the word egregore is often, it's a thought form, right? And it's often considered to be kind of negative, but really it's just any thought form. And we are egregores of ourselves. We are the Ouroboros that is creating itself even as it consumes itself everlastingly. We are only an act of creation. Well, creation and destruction, they are wedded, of course, but that is our fate. We are gods of the imagination.
Yeah. And we're creatures of habit, which is
That
the
too.
right, which is the thing that it's funny. It's people get up, they don't realize that we're creating ourselves every moment of every second. We're inhaling and exhaling, and you can make any changes at any time, but it's the habit. It's the waking up and reacting to the familiar and stepping into routine. And so, yeah, it's very powerful. And why I have so much appreciation for your presence in my life is because as I grow and walk my path, there's less nourishing. No, how do I want to put this? I'm more particular with who I spend time with and what I ingest and what's in my feed.
Right.
I want my feed to be nourishing. I think it's so funny that the feed is called a feed. Um,
On the Loosh farm.
yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
what calls you cattle more than saying your social media feed is a feed. It's like just go to the trough and feed yourself with what you're. But again, we always we're imbued with the power of choice. And I'm either good in my own company, or I want to feed on things that are nourishing my next expansion. And you offer that for me, which it's just, there's no words can express my gratitude for that.
That really does mean a lot coming from you because, you're an artist and a poet and a beautiful soul, and it's just so obvious. So to have that coming from you is very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you. What would you like to discuss next? Would you like me to share another quote that I selected?
Sure, that's a good seed
Yeah.
to have conversations about. Sure.
Okay, let's see. So one of the things I loved that you were talking about that resonated for me was people repeating their story until it loses its power. You mentioned about that.
Right, right. That's a specific technique.
Yeah. So I did Landmark when I was 25. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay. So it's so funny because, and this is why you and I are also kindred, is I don't get stuck in cults. Like I value my freedom way too much to use anybody or anything as a crutch. Like I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll take what I need and keep moving. But I know people have had really bad experiences with it. So when I bring it up, it's always kind of interesting to hear how people think of it. But for me, it was just another mine to go to mine for some gold. And when I first went in there, you go for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, full days, so you're kind of outside the matrix to take in some new information that challenges your regular way of thinking. And one of the first things that the instructor talked about was the voice in the head. And he was like, so yeah, those of you who, feel like maybe you don't want to be here, that voice in your head. And he's like, yeah, that one that's talking to you right now. And it was the first time that that distinction had been made for me, that the voice in my head wasn't me thinking.
Yeah.
And that was a profound revelation.
That is radical for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean, we're taught that, we are our minds and, the ego is us and that kind of thing. And that's so not true. It's laughably untrue.
Yeah. Do you think it's the mind? So you think it's the mind of the programming here that's designed to hypnotize us. It's the voice of the matrix, of the dragon.
Yeah, I think it's actually the voice of an inorganic being from the dream world that might be compared to the mind flayer out of Stranger Things that controls the world cult, and which is one of my terms for the Matrix.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a very powerful being with the ability to control, millions of minds,
Yeah.
perhaps billions of minds, and take their power incrementally without killing them all at one time, because that would not do it any good, because it needs our energy to stay powered up. It's a
Right.
predator. It's I also call it the great parasite. So it's
Yes.
it's it's kind of a predatory parasite.
Do
It's
you think?
also kind of our teacher, which is the weird thing too, like our sensei in the dojo of hard knocks we call reality.
Yes. Well, the fact that we can override it is very interesting to me. You know, I mean,
Yes.
becoming an observer of it is the antidote as far as I'm concerned. You know,
Yeah, I was writing a song yesterday, and it was about a road trip kind of thing, where this couple is on a road trip, and they're taking something, you don't know what it is, and the lines go, "Be the watcher," she said, "watching yourself instead. It's really groovy to watch your own movie. How can you be inside the box when there's no box?"
ooh, good.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing when you can see when you're walking around in the world, even people talking to themselves, their lips are moving and you can see it in operation everywhere. Um, but I've definitely noticed that the more I've been able to just override it, it's so much more quiet. Like my head has never been so quiet, which is such a blessing. I don't take that for granted because I know a lot of people are struggling right now. But
It's true.
what I was saying about landmark is one of the exercises they have you go through is sitting in front of a partner. And most people have a story about their life that has really hooked them. And it's a part of their identity that's not serving them. And it's the exercise is to just sit there and say your story over and over again until you see the ridiculousness of it. And you get to separate who you really are from the story. And and what was amazing about that weekend for me was to see actual physical transformation. And this is speaking to your work as well, physical transformation in people that went in on a Friday, fully identified with their mind, went through this seminar. Either they got up on stage and shared their story, or they just saw themselves reflected in whoever did and broke free. And then they physically changed, like they came back to life.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, really, really amazing. Um, Color in the face, just a change in how they're holding themselves. And I mean, this is life giving work, all of this, but it's funny because there were people that also left. They weren't quite willing to continue facing themselves in the mirror. Um, but anyway, that's their path. I'm glad I stuck with it. But
Yeah, yeah, and it's good that you were able to use it the way that you did.
yeah, man, I wrote a lot of songs coming out of that too.
Uh,
Yeah, a lot of songs.
Very cool, very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were referencing the work of Sergio Magana that I talk about a little bit, where you wear a mask and you stand in front of the mirror and you tell your story, and you do that day after day after day after day for like a full month. And at the end of that, you just experience a massive disconnect with your story, maybe even well before the end of 30 days, but it becomes more and more, not necessarily always just ridiculous, but more foreign to you. Like
Ah,
it's somebody else. And that's where you begin separating out from the mind that you've identified as yourself, that's just an operating system that's been implanted in you.
yeah. Yeah.
And you also can like do when you're doing some of the breathing, the alchemical breath work that I teach with a reabsorption, or and that's based on the work of John Kreider, which is a really brilliant work. You are basically going back in and breathing back in power that you've lost in traumatic situations of one kind or another. And sometimes you can do that for 20 minutes or so, and then you spend some time packing that energy in your cauldron, and or even before you get to that stage, you may be looking for something else traumatic to go and find to breathe back in. And sometimes you just might be in that void state for minutes at a time where there's nothing there.
Hmm.
Nothing is surfacing to be healed. And I'm not saying there's nothing there somewhere, but your mind just kind of goes blank, like the operating system is turned off. You've been pooling in energy, you're not losing a bunch of energy, you're just in the void state. And it's really kind of amazing when that happens. It usually just sneaks up on you, and and then you realize, oh my God, I'm not thinking. And then suddenly you're thinking again.
Yeah. Right. Wow, wild.
Yeah.
Do you meditate in addition to your recapitulation? Do you do you sit and meditate, or do you just apply it to when you're surfing, when you're bike riding, when you're washing dishes? Are you that kind of a
The What I'm doing these days is I haven't really been a meditator in many, many years. It's just not something that I feel has benefited me that much, and I know that it has benefited a lot of people. But I'm just not really a born meditator. I'm sorry, I'm just not, and I can't seem to really learn it either. So sue me. But what I'm talking about is things that might be construed as meditation. It's more of an active alchemy where you're going in and you're seeing things. You're really projecting your consciousness back into some past event. The whole idea is to not just very fuzzily pull back in energy. It's to go back to the event and relive it in a sense, but
got
not
it?
but not to be re-traumatized by it. To
Yeah, yeah,
actually stand in your power with
yeah,
full ability to suck in all of that energy that you lost, and that you're still losing because that past, the idea that that's in the past and it's gone is crazy. It's
yeah,
still there because there is no past ultimately, and it's bleeding you dry. So
yeah,
you have to go back to it. You suck it back in, and that is an act of power. And then you digest that energy as if you are the apex predator. It's
yeah.
yours now. You take it back and you make it your own. You bring it into your body and you store it and warehouse it in your body.
Yes. Yes, and then you're no longer leaking that energy.
Right. I mean, if it's a very traumatic situation or something that is connected to other traumas, you might have to revisit these things numerous times. That's fine. And you might think you're done with it, and then months later, there it is again, and you're looking at it from a different angle. Maybe you walk into the room from another door because you're learning how to project your consciousness. Your dream body is what you're doing. Your that egregore we talked about is getting more and more active, and it can go and it can look at the scene from like a different angle, almost like having a near-death experience or something where it's
Yeah.
there but not there, and it can go in and sort of really take the energy from that situation. And it can also be of great assistance in looking at situations, for example, in the world where the world is being loosed, something like a 9/11 or something like that. And you can go back in time, or you can use a current situation, and you can target not just the event. You can do the event, but you can also target the archontic intent behind the event,
Wow.
which is very pure energy, super
Wow.
powerful. And you can just like sucking through a straw, you can just siphon in the archon's own energy that way.
Wow.
And if more and more people were doing that, this thing would just get out of town. But I don't expect that to happen, or it would really change it somehow. It might be that if its own energy level were lowered to less of a junky level, which is where it is now, it might become something much more beneficial. We just don't know for sure what it would be like if it were operating at a different frequency.
Yeah.
right? I mean, we assume it. Most people assume it's just evil, and it's always the. I don't buy into that. I don't believe in evil. I don't believe in truth. I don't believe in reality. I believe in the imagination.
Huh. A couple things come to mind. One, how are you gauging whether that past traumatic event has been healed? Is it your emotional response to the memory or to you revisiting it? Is it when you're facing it with complete neutrality, or are you honing your ability to really just sense and feel this energetic flow and leakage and capturing? I suppose you're really just sensitizing yourself to feeling the energy.
Well, let's get clear. You're exercising the imagination.
Yeah.
You're creating that past event because you already created it, and it's not really in the past, right?
Okay.
So you can make up your own rules for how you do this and how you
Okay.
sense it. So I don't want to make this
Got it.
some kind of
Oof, I got it.
mystical thing that everyone has to build up to. And yet you do actually get better and better at seeing, but what you're actually doing, seeing these things, but what you're doing is really just building up the muscles of your imagination.
Oh man. Wow. Wow, I love that. I
And then,
love
I would say, in answer to your question about how do you know when it's done, well, first of all, it will stop having an emotional charge. You'll just stop feeling like you're able to draw anything from it. You've
yeah.
kind of imagined it into a different. It's almost like it begins to be as if it never happened, and then you actually start forgetting it.
Yes. It's completely benign. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, and I know this is very old, an old idea, but it's been with me since I was young. Was the idea of dis-ease,
Right.
and I think really what's required is how honest we can be with ourselves. You know, anyway, maybe that's just kind of a weird random thing to say, but it made sense to me a little while ago when you were speaking. Is what's required to know that something still needs revisiting, or is this beautiful honest communion with self. It's recognizing where there are still these little reactions that are happening for you. And again, it takes that time in your own company, time in your own silence, which seems like almost like this diamond in a pile of sand right now. It's like it seems like it's just this rare little thing where people carving out time to be with just themselves, you know.
Yeah, so what I do to streamline my day and not have things kind of hanging over my head is when I get up in the morning, when I wake up, I I do 20 minutes or so of energy reabsorption, just lying there in bed.
Wow.
And sometimes I will follow that with 20 minutes or so of a projection technique that involves, at this point, there's different things you can do, but it basically involves learning how to go into something like a construct, like in the Matrix. So that's your first room, your first chamber, your mental chamber. And then you learn how to create that room with your imagination, and then you can walk around in it, and then you begin looking for a something anomalous in the space. It could be an intense color from part of the room, or it could be a scene that shows up that you can kind of make physical with you, like in the construct when the guns come in or whatever. Anything like that could happen. You can also think about the Stranger Things room when Eleven, walks across the water in the when she goes into the like the sort of the hyperbaric space where she basically goes into something like a projection platform for herself. In any case, you when you've identified one of these things and you can connect with it, what you're actually looking for is a kind of portal. And when you can get like a port key almost, I actually had the experience recently of a boot showing up in the room, like in Harry Potter. And I touched the boot and it sucked me into the second chamber, just like a port key, exactly like a
Wow.
port key. And I didn't even realize what was happening because as you do this more and more, what you begin to experience goes from, yeah, I'm just making all this shit up, it's happening, I know that's what I'm doing, I'm exercising, to occasionally things will happen that seem to be doing themselves.
Wow. Wow.
And that's where it gets wilder and wilder. So when you basically can find a portal, you can go into the second room, and then you can choose to go to a very comfortable spot if you like, something from your past, some place you can go. You can kind of help you visualize this next piece, and then you can go there with your dream body, your energy body that you're in, and you basically spend the rest of the time after you've arrived at that destination, out of your 20 minutes that you're allotting, basically just connecting with the different parts of your dream body. You look at your fingernails and your cuticles and little hairs on you, and you just see it all minutely as you are or as you would like to be. Because you're creating the dream body that you will step into.
Wow.
When you leave this body.
Wow. Yeah.
So what's interesting about doing the energy work in tandem with the projection work is that, and I don't mean like psychological projection, I mean projection of the imagination. So you're basically an Imagineer is what you are.
Yeah.
So you're using the energy to power up your imagination, and then these imaginative activities create more energy. It's back to the Ouroboros. It keeps cycling and cycling and cycling and cycling and cycling. That's how
Incredible.
it builds up. And so it's not even just exponential, it gets kind of parabolic in the way energy can increase over time.
Incredible. Incredible. It's so wild to think that millions and millions of people can live lives without even knowing that's a possibility, without even knowing that's there.
For a very long time without knowing any of that, even though I was really a devotee of the imagination. I mean, the very first book of any merit that I wrote, which I'm still, working on bringing out in its fullness, was called Beginner's Luke, and it was about a character going around imagining himself into existence.
Amazing. Amazing. What just came to mind? Well, my name is Simon, and the things I draw come true.
Yeah, it's also is it Harold and the Purple Crayon?
Oh, yeah.
It's the same. We see this over. It's The Little Prince. It's all of these wonderful stories are just speaking if they're not really speaking a truth in the absolute sense, but they're showing the operational truth of this place that we're in.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it. I'm curious about, so where I've been on my journey has been a lot about frequency. Now, I know you have your thoughts about Abraham, which I understand. She was huge for me at a time when I needed her to understand that my emotions were just indicators as to how I was focusing. That was the biggest takeaway for me. And if I had an emotion that was like, well, Jack, you're just looking at what you don't want. So just shift your focus to the other thing, So it worked for me when I needed it.
That's very helpful.
Yeah, really helpful. And that was huge. So that was 2006, because I had read all the Seth books, Carlos Castaneda in my 20s. And then I read Seth, and all the Seth books were like goosebumps, goosebumps, goosebumps. And nature of reality stuff, and all of it just was so resonant for me as I was journeying along. And then Abraham, and then so frequency has played a huge role, and almost like there's a hierarchy of frequencies. The lower frequencies are fear, the higher frequencies are love and joy or appreciation. But what I'm almost kind of verging now into is this understanding that perhaps neutrality, equanimity is a higher state. But I don't know. And again, nothing needs to be conclusive, but I'm just wondering, how much do you think about being neutral versus getting your vibe high?
Right.
Does that question even make sense?
That's a really great question. Yeah, it's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
I can provide a kind of alchemical lens on that question, if you like. Mm-hmm. That might not be something people have heard. It's back to the Tria Prima. You have the in-breath, the out-breath, the neutral state. And I said that in order to travel into the realms, the great dark sea of awareness that surrounds us, and that, this other world of dreams, we need to find our own personal recipe for using those modalities in tandem, right? So they're all valuable. So the higher you could say that the higher frequencies are valuable, the lower frequencies are valuable, and the emptiness is valuable as well. They have their uses. So
Yeah.
I don't demonize anger or rage or hate or
Yeah.
any of those things. Those are just energies, really,
Yeah.
frequencies. And similarly, I don't put the higher frequencies on some kind of pedestal either, because they're just on the spectrum. I mean, I'm a sound healer. I work with tuning forks. I understand the idea of the spectrum. You're a musician. You get that totally, right?
Yeah.
So I would suggest that the void state, the equanimity that you mentioned, comes in really, really handy in a lot of situations, maybe more so than just being in those ecstatic or those depressed modes. And when I say depressed, I mean, you might just be focused and kind of low energy doing something, where you're not happy, you're not sad or whatever, but you're not exactly in the void state either. It's a little bit of a grind. You just have to get it done, and that's okay, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of a lower frequency. That's a useful lower frequency. On the other hand, you might be in some kind of manic phase, running around with your own head on fire, and maybe you're getting a lot done, but maybe you're not getting anything done that you'll care to remember, right? I mean, it's just funny how all of these can be useful or not, depending
Yeah.
on the situation. So the equanimity piece has to do with not reacting. You mentioned reacting earlier. So
Exactly.
so being in the world but not of it, not being swayed by the left right political divide or the religious divide or the gender divide or any of these other just mental shenanigans that are imposed on the population by the dragon, essentially to keep everyone fighting and giving up their energy so that the dragon can feed on it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and in a very practical sense, when you learn to navigate out into the dark sea of awareness, the the greater the greater world that exists outside of our little circumscribed tonal, this little first world here that we live in. There's the first attention. We're in the first attention, and then there's the second attention, which is this vast sea of infinity, basically, that surrounds us.
Yeah.
That's the Nahual, the mystery out there, right? So as you're traveling out in the Nahual, and if you're not a master of your emotions, and let's say you happen to run into an apex predator out there that is designed to feed on your energy, and if you are spewing energy from fear or even love, it will see that and you become a target because your energy burns brightly. Human
Right.
energy is the real deal. It's the universal gasoline. It's amazing stuff.
Is it ever? Best drug ever.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very, very intense. It's the spice. It's
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Yes, and I love that. And it's funny because I agree. I feel like the equanimity is the neutralizer for the reactivity. It's a beautiful it's a beautiful tool to have for yeah, yeah, when you're in a reaction. And I feel like I'm more able to apply that now than ever. Um, there's very little that triggers me these days because of my position as an observer, but also because my focus is where I want it to be. My focus is on what I can control, and it's on creating. I loved the story about you doing your recapitulation. And was it your brother-in-law?
It was just a family member.
Remember that vibed with you on that same, you know, energy shift that
Right, right.
that you experienced. I thought that was really wild, and that those are the stories that indicate that infinity, that what did the dream world, the etheric, world beneath the world, or I suppose, I mean, there's more than one way to talk about it.
Sure, sure.
But I mean, those things, and what I love about being on this tip especially if you're looking for them, you're going to discover more experiences and examples of that magic at play. Which, I have great faith in all that's occurring ultimately, but I love when it can be bolstered by stories and examples and experiences of others that reinforce it, and yeah, it's quite amazing. So before you experienced your alchemical shifts or I suppose your journey, were you always a shaman? Like, can you see that was always there for you? Was there stuff in your childhood or, your young adulthood? Were you just curious? Like, I'm just curious about your particular. I'm not finishing a sentence. I'm really good at that. I know you had experiences physically that caused you to look into how to heal your body and all that. But were you also just already reading Castaneda and vibing on that kind of stuff?
No, I was different growing up. I was definitely, I mean, I was kind of a golden child in some ways, but I was also different from a lot of kids, and I experienced a lot of bullying that came out in Snooze. I wrote about a whole bully scenario in Snooze that was drawing off of my childhood, where, my character Max is nicknamed Woo Woo, and he's this kid who can travel into the dream world. I mean, it's all of a piece. When you begin looking at my work, it's all kind of like one big book. I haven't written books. I've just written one really, really big book that just keeps growing in a way. So but I definitely became a matrix denizen and bought into the idea of sort of climbing the ladder and being in the material world and that sort of thing in my 20s, before my downfall, when I got really sick with an autoimmune condition, and that was the beginning of my transformation, as painful as it was. And that's when I really began. Until then, I had done a tremendous amount of reading, but mostly it was in literature and literary philosophy and theory and philosophy in general, where I was looking at, the great Western tradition of philosophy and reading everything from, Descartes to Hegel to Baudrillard to Foucault. I mean, just reading all the stuff, and so my mind was really full of. I mean, to this day I really consider myself a kind of postmodernist. That's why your channel is your Substack is a very funny name, because I was always really into this idea that I was looking for what was beyond the postmodern moment that I had been steeped in, and I loved a lot of it, but I felt like a lot of it was really empty too. And it's almost like I wanted to take that postmodern mindset of we're creating ourselves infinitely and none of that matters, and re-infuse it with meaning.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So when I saw your channel, I mean, your Substack, I'm like, oh, I totally understand exactly what she's saying.
Thank you, because so few do.
Yep.
That feels so good to be. Yeah, well, that's funny because I guess, but similarly, you were just always, and I mean this most affectionately, a weirdo. You were like you were your own little individual, and you had these things and happen, and here you are, and I've always sensed that I was a bit of a weirdo, but I didn't really know why until until I'd say the past 5 years. My whole, like, now me being who I am is kind of all started to make sense. I don't want to repeat myself because I've said this on a lot of other podcasts, but I've always been interested in the books and the literature that has given me glimpses and glimmers of there's just something more going on here. and I can feel it. It makes me feel so invigorated. Like even reading the Celestine Prophecy when I was in high school, and I remember just you'd read certain passages and tears come to your eyes because you're and you don't really know why, but there's something so resonant about these books that are reflecting to you there's more to this world, and then I did acid when I was 16, and that convinced me there was more,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right.
You
I
got
was
the
like,
doors of perception blown wide open.
dude, oh man, I was like, we're telepathic right now. This is crazy. Okay, so all this stuff is real that I've, you know. So yeah, what a journey. Um, it's just such a gift to be connecting with more people that have had their own windy road to this moment, and I've never felt less alone and less needy of safety either. Like,
Mm.
okay, so one of the things that I've kind of come to is I think why a lot of people are really trapped in the matrix of duality and clinging on to that pendulum is because they are looking to feel safe in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
The
That moment we leave the womb, we're in a room with fluorescence, and and we're like, what? I want to feel that again, and s- yeah, what do you want to say about that?
Well, I agree. I mean, it's absolutely true. People do want to be safe, and they're using this operating system that has a specific script or series of scripts that are about that topic, right? So this is how you are supposed to be in the world in order to be safe. You have to make money, you have to be selfish, you have to do this. It's all from the dragon. The dragon will never tell you, well, just really get good at your imagination and just dream into being whatever you want, including getting out of here, including getting rid of me.
Yeah.
No, you're never going to hear that.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you're going to hear. We live in a world of inversion, so you're always going to what you're hearing, and this it's sad because this applies to even a lot of material that seems kind of enlightened. I feel like if you just poke around in it enough, there's the agenda, okay, there's the dragon right in there. And it's just over and over. This happens in religion. I don't care if it's Christianity or if it's Buddhism. They are the same to me. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but
They are.
really, they really are. I mean, I had a quip not too long ago that, that, what was it? That Buddhism was just Christianity without sin.
Ah,
It's meant to be kind of a joke, but if you think about it for a little while, it's kind of like, whoa, that's really kind of wild. So, um, this idea that we need to, uh, when we have shoulds thrown at us by that inner voice, that's a really good way to know that's the dragon talking to you. Any
yeah.
should that comes through is not you. It's just
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, I think it's gotten so, mm, everything's a psyop. That, any a movement that's seemingly in a direction that would appeal to my values. It doesn't take much, and this was what really your messaging was in the World Cult as well, which I haven't read the book, but of course I've read a lot of your material. It's, there's a very fine line between community and cults, and I think, agency and external external deriving of your safety is the key there. It's to look at what your motives are, look at why you're clinging to this information or these people or this group, and is it a supplantation of you providing your own sense of safety? Is it providing you with something that ideally, I was going to say should, you in a more healthy situation are providing for yourself? And there's just so much of that around, and I've gone through enough heartbreak and being disheartened by so many people that I no longer I put any following on anybody.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, I have had my heart broken, because then it's not a bad thing, but that it's taught me not to do that,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's a really interesting way that you can see a lot of the things that I'm teaching in my various materials, this book and Pragma Alchemy, my Substack, blah blah blah. It's just ways of looking at the world differently, and ways of looking at the self in relation to the world very differently, and learning how to find your own recipe and really what works for you. So one thing you can do, for example, that isn't typically taught this way. I've never seen it, but that's just something that I've been doing and contemplating. Is when you start doing your energy reabsorption when you wake up in the morning. So you're doing your breathing back in, and so you're de-traumatizing yourself and taking your energy back. The what I like to do is to start with the previous day. Anything that I wasn't able to kind of bring back in when it happened, I go back to it, and it's easy to remember and visualize and imagine because it was just the previous day. And I go through every single thing. It could be something stupid, some little some traffic situation or whatever. It can be anything like that, but something that kind of got my dander up, or made me feel a certain way. And then you just recuperate all of that energy, and you have that, and then you can go on back into your past and do other types of trauma reabsorption, energy reabsorption. What the inventory that I'm describing does for you, though, is that if you're being honest with yourself, you will see what things are taking your energy on a daily basis. And if you are in a cult or a cult-like situation, which I've said before, a cult can be a cult of two. It can be a relationship. Okay,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
can be a cult. So don't think that a cult is some foreign concept to your life. You're in a bunch of them that you don't even know about, probably on a daily basis. But this practice can teach you what things are taking your energy, and those are cults, because cults are designed by the dragon to take your energy and control you.
Oh, I love it. Yes. Wow, man. So do you ever, given that you're doing this work consistently, I mean, you seem tireless in creating, sharing, putting it out there. Do you ever have a day where you are not energized or just want to break from even being Saul, and just want to, like, do you, or because you are continually fueling and your cauldron is full, are you just going downhill? You're just riding downhill?
No, I wouldn't say that. I definitely take time away, and I have a lot of time to myself. I will go literally weeks at a time, sometimes without even getting in a car. I know that sounds really strange. I don't have a cell phone. I live a very different life, and I have a wonderful partner who has been a tremendous support and has empowered me to live this way and be in a super creative mode most of the time. But no, it's not always easy, and I definitely have ups and downs. One of the strange side effects that can come from doing a lot of energy work and a lot of energy reabsorption specifically is that sometimes it can make you cranky, because
Uh-huh.
you have a lot of energy, moving through your circuits, and every once in a while that can just kind of like come out of you. And so you just have to be aware, because your circuits are changing too. They're getting more robust, and they're learning how to handle more energy, but you don't always have the grace and ease, the ease and grace that you would like to with that growth process. And so, I mean, I screw up and say things that I wish I hadn't said. And, I mean, I get in a conflict here, or someone tells me to get off the bike path when I'm on the bike, and then I'm like, screw you, man. It's like, so yeah, that happens. Sure. I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm absolutely not perfect. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
say my cauldron's full either. I mean, that's, you're talking about a multi-year process to get to where it really needs to be. But even with a few months, you can begin to see some pretty amazing changes in your life, your health, your consciousness, and even your perceptions. You can begin to have absolutely paranormal experiences. I've had some moments when recently I walked past the room where I'm sitting, which was my son's room when he lived with us. He's in school, so he's away in a different country right now and has been for a couple of years now. And he was sitting right in the chair where I'm sitting. I could see the hair on his legs. I could see the shape of his knees. Everything. He was there. I had a moment. I had an atemporal distortion where I literally went back in time and was standing there in my dream body, looking at my son in the room like he used to be. It was not a memory. It was a temporal, like a time travel.
Amazing. Amazing. And what an affirmation, not that you need it, but just a beautiful affirmation of because I think for a lot of people when they start out on this path, it requires a lot of faith. But when you gain empirical experiences of your own reflection of the power of all of this, it just, I love when things come along um that prove that reward your faith. To have these examples and these experiences that are products of the work you're doing. I love that because then it just feeds like the Ouroboros, it just feeds back in on itself and what we believe, and it all feeds this beautiful thing. I love that. I've never had an experience like that on my own, although of course I have full belief in it, but I haven't done enough of the physical stuff, which I'm excited to do. Do you go to do body treatments as well, or are you and Lee just doing your own thing with each other? Do you go to a chiropractor ever? Like do you do any of that with other services or other people, or
I mean, I try to keep all of that at an absolute minimum and do whatever I can in-house. And Lee does certain kinds of body work that can be very beneficial. The the myofascial release with the
Mhm.
block, the Ouroboros, this kind of block therapy, it was inspired by block therapy, is phenomenal at releasing adhesion. So let's say you've got a back situation or a neck situation, you can use the blocking very often to just really make it so that a chiropractor wouldn't be necessary because you're getting rid of what's pulling you out of alignment. You're melting that fascial adhesion that's like a piece of catgut attaching to your bone, as strong as a bowstring, right? And pulling you in a certain direction. And you can melt that using the pressure of the Ouroboros. And then your structure, your posture, everything will just change because that's no longer pulling you.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. God, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, yeah, you can just nail it. It's like, whoa, okay, that's gone. And then Lee does various things, including orthobionomy, which is a very almost an opposite type of technique where you're using extremely gentle touch and the mind to imagine a connection like between your hands. You're using compression very often to release certain types of holding patterns in the body, and that also can be miraculous, and you can do it yourself. And some of the pragmalchemy has elements of orthobionomy in it. There's one exercise that I'm working on because I write these up and then I record them, and I'm trying to release about one exercise a month. That's kind of where things are, so that people can have something to look forward to, and also they're not hit with just 1,000 new things. It's just one, about a 20-minute thing that you can read or listen to and learn how to do, and then just start getting better and better at it, and then work that into whatever your routine is. And maybe you won't even have a routine. Maybe you'll just be mixing and matching eternally, whatever. You get to where you're good at all the different exercises, and you can combine them and you can do variations on them, and you've got a tool that is incredibly powerful for healing the body, re-energizing yourself, and allowing you to empower your own imagination. I can't think of anything more time effective
Yeah.
than doing all of those at once. And that was my goal when I set out to create this new form of body work and breath work. It was to make it all happen at one time.
Yeah. How old is the Alchemy? Is it within a year?
Yeah, yeah. It came out within the year as I was working on the book, and because I've been doing all of these other things for a long time. I mean, I was reading John Barnes' myofascial release books. He was the guy who kind of pioneered that back in the I mean decades ago. So
Really?
and I'm working on different myofascial release and stuff. I mean, this guy was incredibly brilliant. So he was truly a pioneer in the idea of just that we had something called fascia in our bodies, and that you could do something about areas where it had gotten hardened or malaligned, or it wasn't doing what it should be doing, or was meant to be doing.
Yes. Yes, because I think I've only first heard of that maybe 6 years ago or something. Like it seems like it's taken a while to kind of hit more of a mainstream new understanding that this is a thing. So for him to be writing about it decades ago is pretty wild. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, I mean, like if I need something to help me in a health situation or whatever, yeah, I mean, I'll go do whatever needs to be done. I'm not going to be a martyr about all this or expect just a miracle. I mean, maybe down the road, that's possible. I know that the idea, when you hear about people like Saint Germain, this is an alchemist, right?
Yep.
All right. And the idea is that you're living forever is somewhat true. You can basically use the power of your philosopher's stone to rejuvenate your whole body. But there is a limit on that, how many times you can do that before you begin to run the risk of being kind of trapped in the matrix.
Oh.
So eventually, and it should be sooner rather than later. I mean, sooner. I mean, this could be decades or even centuries if you if you really wanted to repeat this for a number of times, this rejuvenation process. But eventually, you're going to want to choose the moment of your departure from the matrix and step into your dream body and say sayonara.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
idea that you're going to be living here in the matrix forever, like some undead creature, that does kind of happen, I think, with some alchemists.
Interesting.
This is like the Death Eater in Castaneda, if you remember that character. This is the Death Eater, or the Death Defier. The Death Eater's Harry Potter, Death Defier.
Very interesting. That is not a fate that is desirous to me.
No, and well, and even that character in Castaneda, and I understand that some people will say, well, that's just fiction, and I would say to that, everything is fiction. So
Right.
the Death Defier is a fascinating character, who kinds of basically energetically feeds on the Nahual shaman in the shaman's party. So that ends up being Castaneda himself eventually, where he gives her a gift of energy, his personal power to allow her to prolong her existence, because she had lost the ability to do it kind of the old-fashioned way. And this is one of the risks that you run, um,
Uh-huh.
in kind of almost like abusing this power. It's a very fickle thing.
Right. Interesting. Yes. I love it.
This is
Um,
not this has not been a very normal conversation we've been having.
we are not normal. Thank God. um, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but would you want to do one more quote that I've selected, maybe?
Sure,
Or what are
sure.
you saying? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that you went into, it was almost funny, almost as I was reading, a thought would pop in and then you would address it. And it was so fantastic. So we were in sync even as I was reading your book. But one of the things I thought was funny was when you started talking about DNA. And then what popped into my head was how there is this, you know, again, and that I hate these things, the health freedom movement, whatever that is, but the counterculture of people thinking that maybe DNA isn't even real, and or at least, and hey, I'm all about asking questions and challenging the theories that we start to think are the real thing. But I love that you read my mind when I was thinking if DNA is even a thing. And then you went into Nothing, and I mean nothing, can be scientifically proven to absolutely and fundamentally exist. Blah, dot, dot, dot. The idea that DNA somehow doesn't exist because it was never isolated and proven is naively materialistic, a nitpicking observation made by a mind that doesn't understand the absurdly profound functionality of this, at times, maddening construct. And I love that because it's true. It's, when you're operating on this level of subjectivity and imagination and really getting down to the root of how this material originates, does it matter? Does it matter?
Right. And then I went on to describe how, the collective mind of the modern human, with its very strong, energized belief in science, has created the egregore basically of DNA. And to that extent, we can say that it's real. And to that extent, I can say that it's a transducer of energy and an information carrier, right? And we can work off of that as a functional description of where we are at this point in our history as a species.
Right. Yeah.
But it's only really to be able to communicate certain ideas. It's not extrinsically absolutely real. It's just a working concept. It's like we have to talk in working concepts with everybody we meet, because otherwise it would be gobbledygook. It would be the Tower of Babel,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the postmodern. It's like there has to be something we're consenting and agreeing to, or else it's all just one non-contrasting blob. It's just, it's the idea of money too. It fascinates me. We have all this paper in our wallet that says $10 or $20 or $100 on it, but it's not real. We've just, enough people have agreed to uphold the belief that it means something, that it then means something.
It's exactly like money.
Yeah.
And that's but it's back to it's currency.
Yeah.
It's the current. It is energy. We are just talking about the energy of the imagination, the energy of applied imagination.
Yeah.
In this case, it's also taking advantage of an aspect of the imagination discussion, which René Girard, the great French writer, would call mimetic desire. We're humans. We don't really, because of the operating system, I would say, that we've inherited, we don't really have faith in our own desires. So we look to other people and we desire what they desire.
Oh, wow.
That gives us the comfort, the safety that we're looking for, because we're kind of like herd animals in a way on this loose farm, right? And because we don't even have our own mind that we're operating from. So we're being led by the nose constantly. And the dragon uses this phenomenon of mimetic desire to create belief constructs that then, by hijacking and focalizing the imagination attached to those beliefs, those constructs are then able to create these egregores that we call things.
Uh-huh.
Like money or DNA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get millions and billions of people for decades and centuries believing in something, and you can bet your ass it's quote unquote real.
Yeah. It's so wild. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. And it's laughable. And yet, if I was to walk out into my neighborhood right now and knock on everyone's door, I would be willing to bet most people are in some kind of state of anxiety and fear right now. And just to see it in operation, it's a marvel. It's a marvel of I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I'm horrible at expressing myself. I don't want to say that. Words are not real for me. But it's I'm so grateful at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day and in the middle of the pause. I am so grateful to be on this trip looking out through my eyes, because I I have been afraid, and I'm not afraid, and I'm excited to be alive, and I love connecting with people who see this world as a playground, you know?
Yeah, me too. I love those people. There was a great Bukowski quote that I shared the other day. Let me see if I can find that because it was just such a nice. Let's see. Let me just find it. It's right
Yeah.
here, and it was
Batman
yeah.
all over.
I love Bukowski. He says the free soul is rare, but you know it when you see it. Basically, because you feel good, very good, when you are near or with them.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thank you for being you and doing what you do.
Well,
Yeah.
back at you for sure. I love what you do, and
Thanks, man.
I'm excited to see where things go for you with your Patreon, and
Thank you.
this will be an interesting year.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because, even again, reading your book and talking about I love that you touched on your anonymity as well. And, I've never been one to really want to share that much, but I'm also realizing that if no one knows I exist, how can I possibly subsist by being an artist? I have to do the work of sharing more than I've ever really been comfortable with. And I don't mean creating content, and I know I don't mean that.
Yeah.
I just mean it would be honestly, it would be so easy for me to close this computer and just live in my own room for the rest of my life doing my thing. But I can't help but feel like the sharing would be missing, and the connecting with people who actually like what I'm doing, it would be missing for me. And Substack has really shown me how valuable that is, to actually be heard and appreciated. And, the money's the next thing, but I've actually been thinking about learning crypto trading myself so that I can cultivate more skills so it doesn't have to come from music. I really, so the earning is really interesting as an artist. But I believe in being who I am and just keep going, keep making, keep sharing. Um, and I'm going to do this energy work. I'm really, really finding myself drawn to what you're offering. I
Cool.
think it's my next, I think it's my next stage of growth.
Well, if you decide to do that, um, you know, obviously, if you have questions, come to me, and I would be eager to hear anything you would be willing to share about your process with that, because I'm looking for feedback from people, and that also just gives me new understanding of what I'm presenting. So I would be very grateful for anything you would share.
Yeah. Yeah. I will definitely share. Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. So, and I'll share something with you when we stop the recording here,
Okay.
before we get off, that you might find interesting. So,
Good.
I mean, this has been great. Thank you for all this time that the time, the gift of your time, the gift of your attention, the precious gift of the attention, which is a big theme in the book. I mean, I'm aware of how that is a big deal. Like people like just to have a conversation with me, and just to actually do that and be really present. I mean, you're like sending me focused energy that's helping me be me. You know what I mean? It's very meta.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Maybe it's the real and the real. Maybe it's the only real, right? It's the whatever. Anyway.
Good. Good.
I hear you. I get you. And I'm so grateful I can give you that, because you're feeding me at the same time. So what a beautiful thing.
Cool. Cool. I love it. I love it.
Awesome, dude. All right. Well, cool. We'll call it quits and hang on the line.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, if you don't mind, is I just want to encourage people to go to my Substack,
Yeah.
saulluckman.substack.com, and as of now, you can still get a review copy. That will be good for another couple of weeks. You can get a review copy, a free review copy of Get Out of Here Alive. I'm also serializing the audiobook version, so you can check that out at my Substack. And I will be coming out with the paperback within the next couple of months also. So I just wanted to let people know. And the Substack is also where you can learn more about pragmalchemy.
Awesome. Sweet.
And because I'm going to be putting this on my channel, would you give your coordinates as well so that people can find you on Patreon or Substack or wherever you wish to share?
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel with my full name, Jacqueline Rendell. I've been toying with the idea of renaming it, which I'll tell you later.
Okay.
I'm postmodern on Substack, and my Patreon is also my name, Jacqueline Rendell. Don't forget the C and the U and the E.
Yeah,
I'll never
those
learn to
French
spell my name.
things.
Jacqueline.
Right. Good.
That's it. Yeah. Fantastic.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again. Much love to you. And I guess we'll stop recording here.
Awesome. Much love to you, Saul.
Thank you.